Thank you all for coming to my theater session. My name is Katie Shimizu, and I am a software engineer too on the app services team. Specifically, I work on Azure Functions, and the specific part of Azure Functions that I've been spending my time on these last couple of months is our new extension for advanced scenarios, Durable Functions. So let's get started. We've got 20 minutes and a lot of material to go through. This is a 300-level talk, so I'm going to be going into a bit more detail than you got if you, for example, watched the keynote on Monday. The serverless keynote with Nir, not the Satya keynote. I don't know if he talked about us at all. Anyway, so quick plan. How many of you are familiar with the term serverless? OK, I can skip my first two slides. How many of you are familiar with Azure Functions? I can skip my next two slides. Great, we can dive right into Durable. So I was going to do a serverless refresher, but not anymore. So we'll dive right into some of the challenges of serverless as it stands today. When you are architecting things with Azure Functions. And then we're going to talk about some of the potential solutions to those challenges with durable functions. So let's get started. OK. Don't need this. Don't need this. Don't need this. Don't need this. I don't need this. All right. So what is still hard with Azure Functions? Very, very quick rundown for anyone who didn't raise their hand that I didn't see. Azure Functions is an event-driven serverless platform. You upload your code, it fires based on some sort of event that comes in, and then you can bind your calculations and so on to some sort of output. Some things, however, are still difficult to do in durable functions, or are difficult to do in Azure Functions. For example, if I want to take the output of one function and use it as the input into another function, I have to coordinate that somehow. If I want to have one function take some sort of event and then parallelize some sort of work, I can still do that in Azure Functions. It involves a lot of queues. But then how am I going to, say, pull all of those back in? How am I going to tell when all of those tasks have completed and aggregate all the results that I got and then keep going? What if I want to aggregate a bunch of events into one function? What if I want to listen on multiple events? What if I want to do different things based on what kind of event I get in? What if I want to do some extended status monitoring on some endpoint? I want to see, hey, maybe this machine, I want to check its temperature, right? And if it goes over a certain threshold, I want to take a particular action. If it doesn't, or if it goes under a certain threshold, I want to take a different action. How do I do that on a time basis and have flexible logic that works with that? What about if I have an API that's running for a very long time? What if my Azure function takes, say, 5 minutes to complete? We hope they don't. They're supposed to be fairly fast running, but you guys are putting some serious load on them sometimes. So if my Azure function takes a while, my client is waiting for 5 minutes, and that's pretty unacceptable in those situations. How am I going to communicate back to my client, hey, I'm working, and here's something that you can check in the meantime so that they're just not left hanging? And lastly, what if I need to have some human interaction in there? What if I'm doing something like phone authentication and verification? What if I'm doing some sort of two-factor auth? And I want to get some sort of human interaction in there, but I also don't want to wait forever, because sometimes we don't reply to all our text messages, especially if they're automated. And I want to have some sort of timeout. How would I do that in Azure Functions? And the answer to some of these is, I don't know. But I will talk about two of the patterns and how you would approach them in Azure Functions, and then how you could approach them in Durable. So let's look at the first, simplest case, function chaining. Function output becomes input, and then it all comes back, and I do something with it. Well, in regular Azure Functions, some of you have probably set up something that looks like this, where I have a function that puts its output onto a queue, and that queue triggers another function, and so on and so forth for as long as you want to go. And you can do that. I've done that. But the problem I found as my workflow got longer and more complex was that I had a lot of resources to manage, for one, and two, I became the only person who knew how they all